Work take this opportunity to welcome all our guest speakers and participants to the national webinar series on challenges faced by social work professionals. The role of professional social workers is full of challenges. System change is in contradiction to norms of professionalism, developing skills such as flexibility, adaptability to new and unexpected situations, or keeping one's own fears, stereotypes, and assumptions on hold. Having the spontaneity to tackle numerous problems that arises on field and community in a way that is comprehensible to every person we cater to, and finally motivating and empowering people to reach their fullest potential. And today we have the privilege to have with us Dr. Archana Kaushik, a prominent expert from the field of social work, who shall be reflecting on the theme of the webinar. We also had a second session with Dr. Vikram Singh, who would have addressed us on the topic addressing non-suicidal self-injury among adolescents and young adults. But due to some unforeseen medical emergency, we had to cancel the second session of Dr. Vikram Singh. I request all the participants to mute their microphones during the webinar, and please do not click the present now button. I also request to post your queries to the chat box of the platform at any point of the time during the presentation. Our resource person will respond to your queries at the end of the presentations. The feedback form will be posted during the session in the chat box, and the participants are requested to fill out the form during the webinar itself. Beginning with like today's webinar, keeping the traditions on the culture of our college, we will begin with invoking the blessings of Goddess Saraswati. May I now request Srinivas Rao, Assistant Professor, Department of Social Work, to do the needful. Okay, sorry for the inconvenience. There's a technical issue playing the Vandana. Now I'd like to request Dr. Zakir Hussain, Director, NEF College, deliver his welcome address and express his thoughts about the webinar.
वेबिनार भी शुरू हो गया, चलो आप क्या नहीं, ये तो मैं चलते चलते रन कर लूंगी, इसमें क्या करना, बिना ढूंढ लो.
So over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone present in the virtual platform. Today is the first day of our national webinar series on challenges for social work, organized by the Department of College, Guwahati. Madam Kaushik, Associate Professor, Department of Social Work, HOD, Department of Social Work, every professor
There is very disturbance. Please make other mute.
medical profession as well as the
Let me get with the mute.
very knowledgeable their social duties, performing their duties.
Can you please all participants turn off your mute?
Dr. Zakir Hussain. Zakir Hussain का नाम क्या है? Zakir Hussain.
Sorry, hold on, I don't know. I cannot see. hold Nikki. राव सर का म्यूट हो गया.
वही तो Zakir Hussain को क्या करूँ मैं यार? ये ना Zakir Hussain. होगा.
Could you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Should I start once again?
No, sir. It's okay. You can carry on.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Archana Kaushik, Associate Professor, Department of Social Work, Delhi University. Dr. Alia Jamin Ahmed, HOD, Department of Social Work, NEF College. Faculty members, and my dear participant students. Today, we have joined here in the National Webinar Series conducted by the Department of Social Work, NEF College, on the topic Challenges for Social Work Professionals. Since the time of pandemic, both the legal, medical professional and social work professionals is facing, and they are playing a very crucial role during that time of pandemic. At this juncture, social work professional is facing a lot of challenges in performing their duties as envisaged by the profession. I believe this Dr. Archana Kaushik will give us a thorough idea regarding the challenges and challenges faced by the social work professional. I do hope this session will be useful for each one of us. With these words, I welcome you all to this session. Thank you very much. Over to Anchor.
Thank you, sir, for the welcome address. I now take the honor of introducing our speaker for the day, Dr. Archana Kaushik. Dr. Archana Kaushik is an associate professor at the Department of Social Work, University of Delhi. Her areas of specialization and research interests include gerontological social work, death and dying issues, spiritual social work, empowerment of the marginalized communities, development administration, and HIV/AIDS. She has many books and research articles on varied issues in the journals of national and international repute to her credit. She has conducted several research studies such as determinants of active aging in rural, urban, local, correlates and determinants of death among individuals, social, economic, and environmental cost of death, distance care of the elderly, poor and vulnerable aged, elder abuse, and social support for the aged, vulnerabilities and empowerment of Dalits, etc. She has taken up many evaluation studies with Planning Commission, various ministries, and other institutions in different capacities. She has presented papers and chaired sessions at several national and international conferences on various social issues and participated as an expert in many television shows and other platforms. Once again, thank you, ma'am, for being with us today. And may I now request you to offer your deliberations on the topic ethical challenges faced by social workers in institutional and non-institutional setting. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so very much. Padmaja Dr. Alia, and foremost, Dr. Zakir Hussain ji. Thank you so very much for such a warm welcome. Hello, all the participants. I really thank you all because I love such opportunities to interact with young minds and share whatever we have learned over the years as educators. So today's topic that is given to me and on which we would be discussing, I'm just sharing the PPT, and please let me know if it's visible or not. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes.
So we would be talking about ethical challenges faced by we the social workers in institutional as well as non-institutional settings. So these are the certain dilemmas, certain challenges that all of us have faced, are facing, and would keep on facing till the time we keep on working in the community, in the society as social workers. And I would try to discuss many of the challenges that personally I have faced, and maybe my students have faced, and collectively we would try to resolve maybe how we can go through these challenges and overcome these challenges. I was told initially that the participants, mainly the students, are from MA previous year as well as final year. So just so that we all are on the same page, I would maybe focus a little bit on what social work means to us, because I believe final year students are a bit more well versed with these concepts. They know when you enter into this field, you had many notions, many misconceptions regarding social work. According to this latest global definition, social work is a practice-based profession, an academic discipline that promotes social change and development, social cohesion, and the empowerment and liberation of people. Now, these words, social change, development, social cohesion, empowerment, these are value-laden terms. They do not mean same to all of us. We have our different maybe cultural baggages, our attitudinal, perceptional domains to view and conceptualize these terms. It is in this context that I would be discussing about the ethical challenges today. And some of the maybe core values that social work has are human rights, social justice, collective responsibility, respect for diversity. They are central to social work, and our ethical principles are revolving around these only. Now, if it is unfortunately online platform, otherwise offline would may things become much more participatory. Had I been to your institution and delivering face to face this lecture, at that time you would have discussed on what ethics means. But just to for a layperson, what the term ethics means. Ethics means these are certain maybe concepts, certain principles that help us differentiating between what is right, what is wrong, and what is legal. So we often are confused. When you were in your adolescence, at that time you might have understood these concepts in a bit black and white. There is we understood these notions of opposites. There is a dark opposite, there is light, but there are many shades in between. So life offers these shades to us, and we tend to get confused many times which way to go. But definitely these ethical principles are very important, and for social work professionals, definitely they are the important ingredients of our profession. These code of ethics are the specific rules of conduct which every member, every worker must adhere to. Because if we have this strong base of being ethically right, we would be able to deliver services that are in sync with the values that are laid down in social work profession. Now these ethical principles, they emerge from certain core values, and these core values to our profession are service, dignity, importance of human relationships, social justice, worth of the person, integrity, competence, and and such others. Sorry, because integrity has come twice. Now let us look at the service called a value called service. Now this service, the ethical principle that is associated with the value service is social workers' primary goal is to help in need and to address social problems. Uh, as social workers, we are believed to understand this, that we as social workers must be maybe selfless in our service delivery. We should not be differentiating between our clients based on, we should not be having preferences based on their caste, class, creed, and others. And social workers are encouraged to volunteer. It's not that anybody who is paying us only, then we are doing social work. So selfless service is a value that is given in this particular ethical principle. Now let me share with you my that experience when I was of your age, roughly around 20 years back, when I joined the department as a new student trying to make sense of what social work means. And I was placed in my first year, in my previous year, in AIIMS Hospital. Most of you must be aware of this big hospital, AIIMS Hospital in New Delhi. And there was a small social service unit, and there I was placed. So the patients who are poor, who are destitute, they would keep on barging in that small room, and we would disburse all the medicines, free medicines if we have that, and maybe giving them free bus pass, free train tickets, form, and all that. So these were a few services among many that we were rendering at that time. So there comes a lady. One day I was sitting there, and a lady came, and she was wearing lot of jewelry, maybe necklace and bangles and whatnot. So, and she said, she gave me the slip, and she said, I'm very poor and I want these medicines. And I was taken aback. What is this? She's wearing so much of a gold, and she's asking for this. See, and in my report that evening, I had written so many negative things, that people keep on, there is a scarce resource and people keep on barging in the name of free medication and whatnot. I gave it, I totally blasted in my report, expressing my anger, my frustration over that lady, though I did not say anything to her. That is the part of my personality of not saying like this, but yes, I expressed myself in my report. So I submitted that report. Next day was my individual conference, and my teacher very lovingly, she had read the report, she was smiling, and she said, Archana, do you know, because you come from a background and maybe you have developed that kind of perception that because and ma'am was right in that way. I come from that background. I have this cultural baggage with me that maybe in front you, if you ask for help, that is so bad. One person should be self-sufficient. Asking for donations is something that is totally uncalled for. If I would, and I had written that in my report, if I would be in her place, I would have sold my jewelry with and not begging in front of anybody for free medicines. So ma'am made me understand that there are cultural differences. You need to learn to these. While there are some chances that she, because free medicines are available, she wants to, and this is the human tendency. But at the same time, as social work professional, I also need to understand that maybe selling of jewelry might be a very bad omen in their community. This jewelry might be very precious for her because her parents might have given it. You do not know that. So judging the person just on the face value is not right. And oftentimes we do say that we are selflessly serving others, but these dilemma, these conflicts do come in. Now I come to the next value, that is social justice. Now, the ethical principle that is associated with is social workers challenge social injustice. We tend to work with the marginalized communities, with disadvantaged communities, and our focus should be on eliminating poverty, unemployment, discrimination, other forms of social injustice. We need to, and we are taught in that way. You need to raise your voice against the people who are marginalized, who are disadvantaged, who are maybe Dalits. So I must share. There are n number of examples. I would just like to share 2-3 examples where we face this kind of a conflict. So. There was one of my students belonging to a Dalit community, and he was working in a village where this caste discrimination was at the peak. And when he was working with this organization on caste issues, and he approached the village, and it was not in the good taste of most of the upper caste people, and they tried humiliating him, and whatever he would say, they would just negate. And he became a source of black humor. And often we face these problems. One of my students, she was HIV positive, and she was working as counselor. And there were many situations where people, they made fun of her. Those who came to know that yes, she is HIV positive, they and there, as social workers, they tend to feel helpless because they belong to that particular community, and people around them, they do not give them that kind of maybe authority or respect, so that they are listened to. And these are some of the cases. And even I'm not talking about this caste issue only, gender issue. I myself have suffered these kinds of incidents many times. Policemen just couldn't take it that a lady is maybe she's driving a car, and he is maybe he is now a police cop standing at the traffic light. So without having any mistake committed, he asked me, "Oh no ma'am, you were on the phone." I said, "Car was stopped there, traffic light is there, you tell me where is the mistake." I received a phone call, and I just within a second I said, "I'll call after reaching home." That's all. The car was stopped, it was traffic light. But no. So ultimately, whatever grievances we have against any other person, we are not at the equal platform, be as social workers, or maybe if we are working for the communities that are downtrodden. One of my students, he is placed, he was doing job after passing out from our department. He was working in Rajasthan with self-help groups. So there was a lady who was who was thrown out from her household because she ran away, and the man also ditched her, and she had returned back, and the family did not maybe accept her. And this social worker, he went out of the way to help her, and maybe collaborated at many places, got her some job, secured some job for her, and then also associated her with this self-help group that he had created, and he was in charge of creating a specific number of self-help groups in that block. This lady could not take this help in a positive stride, and started making advances towards the social worker. And when he declined, when he politely turned down her requests, and she went to the police station saying that this man molested me and tried to rape me. And this poor fellow student of mine had to struggle a long battle to to ensure that his credibility, his dignity, his integrity remains intact, and he comes out clear with the blames that she has posed on him. So these are the ethical dilemmas that we come across when we work in these communities. Next is dignity. And the ethical principle is social workers respect the inherent dignity and worth of a person. So in this, when we talk of this dignity and worth of a person, we also value the decisions that are made by our clients. That means the principle of self-determination is obeyed. And there are n number of examples when I had faced such kind of conflicts in my life with regard to this particular ethical principle, client self-determination. Because when we say dignity and worth of a client, we should believe in that. We often come across such situations where we encounter that kind of ethical dilemma. one of the cases, I had worked extensively in the field of HIV, and there were n number of cases where a particular incident I may share here. In Delhi University Health Center, there was integrated counseling and testing center. HIV testing center was initiated there, and the students and other individuals in the community, they would come there, get themselves tested, and whatever their results are, and after that, depending upon the results, the follow-up and other process would be carried out. So there was one case, and these counselors, we were mentoring them. I am the master trainer with the NACO on HIV counseling. So as master trainer, we were supposed to train the counselors who are sitting there and who are handling such cases. So as a part of the protocol, because when we say client self-determination, the rule says that we should not disclose the HIV status of the person who has come to us without his or her permission. So now this man, he got himself tested, and even in pre-test counseling, he said, no, nothing. I went to the barber shop, and there I had some cut, and after that I'm feeling some dizziness. So I thought that I should get myself tested. So all kinds of excuses are given by people. I'm not saying every person who comes gives excuses. There are very much genuine cases, and there are very people also fabricate different kinds of stories. So this man, he said he was about to get married. And we definitely note down the address as a part of our entire process. So he told us some address, he told us some phone number. Of late we check, because the moment they write the phone number, they give the phone number, we dial that number, and often the mobile number, and the person, and ensure that the number is right. So that is the only thing, but address check karna is a bit too taxing at that moment. So this man, he went for pre-testing, and the procedure says after pre-testing, then we go for blood test, HIV test, and after that, based on the result, post-test counseling is given. So in pre-test counseling, he told that yes, because barber, there was a cut, and that is why he wanted to get himself tested. He turned out to be positive, and he did not come to take his test report. He sent some of his friends, and this counselor said, nothing doing, only I would share with him only. So after much of persuasion, he came, and obviously he took the report, and he said, I'm going. So the counselor said, no, listen, you said that you are going to get married. So it is important that you notify your partner. It is very, very important. And if you need my support, I would do that. He promised, no, I'll tell to my fiance about my HIV status. And if she still agrees, then only I'll go for marriage. But he did not. This counselor kept on ringing to him, and he would not pick up phone. He blocked her. She tried contacting his friends, but they also did not give her any clue about this. So the wrong address that was given to her, she went there, and obviously the address was wrong. We came to know later on. So we were perplexed, because this man has not told to her partner. So the partner notification oftentimes becomes such a big challenge for us, the counselors. that we do not know whether to, because if you see this entire story in the angle of, with the angle of human rights, it is the right of that girl who is getting married to know about this boy's HIV status. But this is the biggest ethical dilemma that we face. There are many such cases in this particular maybe principle of client self-determination, that often we keep on facing these problems. There was another case. My student, she was placed in for her field work in Nari Niketan, short stay home, where a girl was there. She was raped by a man, sexually abused by him for many months, and then maybe after police raid she was brought here, and the counselor, the student counseled her and gradually tried to normalize her. And after that, one day she said, Didi, I'm going to marry this man, the same man who was the perpetrator, who was the abuser. And she was shocked. Why? No, he has changed now and he's a good person. He said that he wants to marry me and everything would be fine. She tried her best to convince that no, this is not the right decision. But this girl, she ran away from short stay home and got married only to be abused and betrayed again. So the social workers face such challenges in day-to-day life. Next is importance of human relationships, and the ethical principle associated with it is social workers recognize the central importance of human relationships. We should give much importance to on the goodness of human beings, and we engage with people as partners in the helping profession, and we should strengthen this human relationship. That human relationship should be the primary thing for us. After all, we the social workers are called the doctors of human relationships. So it is in this context that this particular ethical principle plays a very, very important role. And we have seen in practice that the kind of professional relationship that is to be maintained, it becomes often very difficult. See, counseling is not a culturally ingrained thing in our Indian society. So oftentimes I invariably face this problem. As a part of my profession, there are many instances where I provide counseling to students, to community people, to any person requiring help, and then they do not understand the boundaries per se. From little things that often become too taxing for us, the social workers. Instance, there have been cases where I provided counseling to partners in marital conflict. And I talked to the lady, I talked to her husband and tried to resolve the conflict, and then they are trying to make their marriage work. So they do not understand this, though I do not charge anything. This service is free of cost, but they tend to become too dependent on me that every now and then they would make a phone call, Didi, this happened, and ma'am, that happened, and now how should I respond to this? He did not bring flowers for me, now how should I respond to this? My personal life, my personal space, that gets jeopardized because they do not understand. They are the one client, I am the one counselor for them. Though I played an important role at that time, they felt a therapeutic, that particular process was therapeutic for them, healing for them. They felt happy, they felt rejuvenated. It's okay. But then there is a personal space. They would not mind calling me at 10:30 in the night, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm taking class, in between calling. So you do not know how to tell to them that, please, this is the boundary. This happens with most of the students also. You tend to help them out a little, go a little out of the way for them, and then they think that yes, now you are there to solve every problem. So the role of a professional social worker, the professional boundaries are not maintained by the client side. Also, at times, when I was a student in Delhi University, my supervisor, he got a job somewhere. He was working as ad hoc in the department, and he got a permanent job somewhere. He left, and in between, my supervisor changed, fieldwork supervisor, and this new supervisor was again a young ad hoc, a young lady working as ad hoc, and at that time we hardly knew who is ad hoc and who is permanent. These differentiations were not there, but yes, she was new to the department, and she started supervising me. And after a month or so, I came to know that she had left the job. She got married. When she was a student in the department, she was placed in a de-addiction center. There was a client, and she was doing casework with him, and who was a drug addict. And she fell in love with him, and now she got married to this man. So somewhere, human relationships, we do not understand where are the boundaries. From social worker side also, from the client side also, there are many slips in between that we need to be cautious about and adhere strongly to the ethical principle. Coming to the value of integrity, the associated principle is social workers believe in a trustworthy manner. Now we need to be holding strongly the ground of ethics, the standards, the practice, what social work calls for. But the ground reality is that such ethical principles many times are not adhered to. Example, one of my students, he was placed in HIV setting, where this organization, an internationally renowned organization working on HIV, it was having one service called mobile HIV testing facility. So they have a van, and van had one doctor, one helper, and they would go from these slum communities across Delhi and NCR region, and they would do the HIV testing. So the student would also accompany, and would try convincing these people, the rickshaw pullers, the migrant workers, you please get yourself tested. So there were two incidents of this kind that questions the integrity of social workers when they are delivering these kinds of services. There is a thing called, you need to fulfill the target. By month end or by day end, minimum of 20 HIV testing should be done. So that these kinds of targets are given to the staff members. So the staff member who was given this target, once the target could not be completed because nobody was ready. If the target is of 20, they might have filled 14 or 15. So he asked the two of my students, see, I would write your fictitious name and you get yourself tested. They said, sir, we got ourselves tested the moment we started working in this. No, 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 again you get yourself tested. So fake filling of this. This was still maybe in terms of severity, it was towards less severe aspect, but the more dangerous was once they could complete the target within 2 hours. And then there was a lady standing in the queue who might have gained so much of courage. If we try to be a little empathetic, getting oneself tested for HIV, it's not at all an easy thing. And for a lady who is who comes from that cultural background where ladies are not going outward and not confident enough, so she might have gained so much of courage to get herself tested. She might have listened from somewhere that yes, my husband is into this, and maybe he also had unprotected sex with me. I might be positive, and with so much of hesitation she had come. And this staff said, no, today's this thing is over and will come next time. Because and it is not fixed that every Tuesday they would go to the same community. God knows when next that the number of that particular community would come. And the student kept on requesting him, sir, please, she came with so much of courage, so much of hesitation is there in her. Please be a bit compassionate on that. He said, no. And I also have faced as student trainee when I was in AIIMS hospital. The moment any patient would come in, I would leave my tiffin. If it's a lunchtime, everybody is having tiffin and they say, jao, abhi time nahi hai, 2 baje aana, whatever, maybe in somewhat rude language. So even then, during the lunchtime, if any patient would come in, I would leave my lunch and I would rush to provide him or her medicines or whatever services were available at that time. And they used to make fun of me, the staff there. You are new to this profession. Maybe give yourself some time, 2-3 months later, we'll see. You would be just relaxing and you would get used to all these nonsense banging on the door for such services. But till date, that sensitivity is there in me. It is very important that we remain that sensitive. So again, definitely it becomes very difficult when we talk of integrity. We can ensure our integrity, but when it comes to delivering services as an agency, then definitely we may face a lot of problem. Next is this value of competence. Competence actually means it is amalgamation of experience, knowledge, skills, behavior, performance, goals. Amalgamation of everything would make us competent enough to deliver services. So social workers practice within their areas of competence and develop and enhance their professional expertise. There are many problems. See, nobody can, and we often criticize our profession that as social workers, we tend to become jack of all trades and master of none. So a little bit of casework, a little bit of group work, a little bit of counseling skills, but we are not trained in anything. We hardly refer, because for us reference may means that we are incompetent, but that is not so. Competence means excelling in one area, and wherever required, you should be able to hand over the charge to the other person, refer that person to other maybe social worker, or maybe we are not so proficient in handling mental health ailments. But definitely we can refer to them, those who are in psychology setting. Psychologists are there, psychiatrists are there. So that referral thing is lacking in our setting. And I have seen this in the case of HIV setting. I was a part of this international research earlier in 1999 2000. At that time, lot of money was diverted to HIV studies and all that. So this was UNAIDS pilot study done in India to be replicated in other countries. And we were seeing how in hospitals these HIV positive patients are treated, the kind of discrimination they face. And to our surprise, at that time in Delhi, the government record said that there are more than 10,000 HIV positive persons. And wherever we went, there were no HIV positive persons. We could meet them, we could interview them. Hardly we were supposed to conduct 100 such interviews, and after 13 there were no patients available in any of the three big hospitals in Delhi. So the moment we come to know that so and so hospital has one HIV positive person admitted, we would rush. Obviously, we had certain ethical parameters in place, that the nurse or doctor would take the permission first, and then the caregiver would also give the permission. The patient should agree, and then only we would go and interview him or her. But the moment we go to the hospital, no, he ran away or she ran away. So anything? Okay. So I'll just quickly wind up. There are 2-3 more slides. Is me. Now it is in this sense of competence that I am giving this particular example, that we have already there were some organizations at that time who were working with HIV positive persons. They had these residential complexes where HIV positive clients were staying, and we tried collaborating them, and they bargained. You give us this much of funds. We were not having funds, we were just the employees, but they said no, we have these HIV patients and you can interview, but we want this collaboration. So bargaining kind of thing happening even among HIV positive persons. I could hear statements like, you are getting job because of us, what are we going to get out of it? So many times these kinds of referrals become very tough, and the other organization is not very encouraging. You have kept confidence, you have kept the information confidential of your client, but you refer to that particular client to your friend who is a psychiatrist, but this friend is not maybe sensitive enough. He or she says in the entire community, see, this is the positive person who has come, and this is referred by this, and it becomes very difficult to handle such situations. I know I had taken students because I was teaching this HIV paper to one of the organizations working with truckers, and many truckers, they were HIV positive. So the one of the staff members, he was also HIV positive. um, and when we, the students, and me, the teacher, we went there, and definitely I could not have ever dreamt of revealing the HIV status of that staff member to anybody. But the project officer there, he said, welcome students, and we are working on this particular fellow, you can ask, he's HIV positive, and you can ask how he contracted this. So it becomes very, very difficult for us to adhere to these ethical principles. Now coming to this, social workers have ethical standards that are concerned with, or maybe ethical responsibilities towards clients, then colleagues, then practice setting, and then professionals, then social work profession itself, and the broader society. So at the maximum, though we face be adhering to these ethical responsibilities with regard to clients, but still certain things are in our hands. But when it comes to practice settings, as I gave example of institutional settings, non-institutional settings, there the agency may not be that sensitive. In one of the meetings that we were holding, there were master trainers across India, and we were getting maybe we were designing certain training programs for the counselors, and one of the renowned doctors, and we had this one sensitization session that we could hold with regard to counselors, because counselors also need to be sensitive enough, because they are counseling HIV positive persons. So we were given certain stimulants that these are the exercises that you can hold. So before we could, as trainers, give them training on these, so it was some kind of training of trainers. So we were undergoing these activities. So one of such activities was, we were given a slip, and we were told that your HIV status is there in this, you read out, and then you express how you felt after receiving this HIV status. So this doctor at that time, he said, I knew I haven't done anything wrong, so I can't be HIV positive. So that kind of insensitivity might be there among our colleagues in the practice setting or the agency that we are working with, among the professionals in larger circle that we face. So, and now a little maybe discussion on handling these dilemmas. These are very important. There is code of ethics by NASW, National Association of Social Workers, America. In India also, NAPSWI and other organizations, they have come up with the code of ethics for social workers. So you refer to these code of ethics whenever any kind of such dilemma is there. You consult that code of ethics manual. Also, many times in child setting, because when we talk of client self-determination, children are not having that kind of competence or skills to take decisions on their own for their own benefit. So, and many times we have seen in our field work that the students who are placed there, they say that parents all of a sudden they become so maybe loving and caring towards the child who was placed in the institution for months together, and they never ever bothered to come and see the child. But when this girl was receiving the compensation, all of a sudden these the parents, they become extra indulgent and loving and caring towards this girl, because compensation mil raha hai. So and neither the anybody in child welfare committee or the institution could do anything. They knew that this love is fake, it is only for the sake of getting the money. But this is how things are. When I was in AIMS hospital, there came a case where this woman who was 8 months pregnant, her husband was having this antisocial personality. He had thrown this big stone on her head, and she was badly injured. She was taken to the AIMS hospital, but she could not be saved. Her daughter could somehow be saved, and father being the natural guardian, this little girl was handed over to him. I cried that day. I really cried that day, because but our legal maybe whatever the rules, the laws that say, they say no, a natural guardian is father. So definitely, but there are certain things in which we cannot do anything. We need to abide by the legislations. Whenever as students you face any problem, you have your supervisors, you take their guidance. Also, the process of National Council of Social Workers in India, it is in the way, and once it is established, we would get a legal status, and this body, accreditation body, can provide us much insight into these, how to resolve these ethical dilemmas. Consult experts, do research on that. So these are some of the ways in which you can handle this. And now this is my own journey, and how I tried maybe dealing with these ethical challenges. When I joined the department, I was told the social worker uses self as a tool. A doctor has stethoscope, a doctor has maybe thermometer, whatnot, to measure the problem, or maybe uses that tool. The painter uses brush, the maybe artist or sculptor has also certain tools to carry out his work. So as social workers, we use our self. So that has amazed me, and I had tried working in that area a lot. What is that self? And I realized the more I become self-aware, the more I become aware of my own cultural values, my own baggage, my own perceptions, the better equipped I am to handle what the other person is going. If I'm able to understand myself, my needs, my challenges in a better way, that gives me a smooth passage to know other person in a better way. And we, the human beings, we are like the tip of the iceberg is our behavior. A lot, we have studied that a lot depends upon what is there in our subconscious, and that is why at times we tend to behave in such a way that we ourselves are not maybe we have not expected ourselves to behave in that way. I may at one particular time become really violent, and then surprised, how come I become so angry? I never expected this from myself. So we hardly know ourselves. Your journey to know your true self, your true nature, would pave way towards knowing others in a better way and dealing with these ethical aspects in a better way. Lastly, if egg is broken from inside, it gives life. It gives rise to life, है ना? So egg is broken from inside and life comes out. If egg is broken from outside, you can make omelette or whatever not, but that life finishes. So same is true with ourselves. Whether ethical values, whether skills, you start with your own self. Look into yourself. That would pave way to knowing others and dealing with this. Thank you so very much, and I am extremely sorry for taking a lot of time. I thought of putting alarm, but somehow it started and I couldn't. Sorry for that. I'm stopping the presentation now.
Thank you, ma'am, for enlightening us with your session. Arnold? Thank you, ma'am, for enlightening us with your session. We'd now like to take some questions from the participants. The first question is from Paridhi Borwa. Her question is, how to deal with transference and counter-transference in a professional relationship during any session of counseling?
Very interesting and very relevant question. Thank you for asking this. See, for dealing with the counter transference, I said you need to be self-aware. Keep on observing yourself. What are your own attitudes? There is a famous saying that says, most people are other people. That means we are the result of what others have inculcated in us. Most people are other people. So we need to become our true self. We need to understand what have been our values and how these values I have inculcated that is the only way through which you can deal with the counter transference. And they are very true that transference, it becomes very difficult. I also have shared that I also get victimized by these transference things, but it is very important that in the beginning itself you politely decline to maybe such if you get this intuition that yes, transference is happening, then very politely but firmly you need to tell it to your client ki these are the boundaries, this is the professional relationship, and I cannot go beyond this. I know it is tough, but definitely this is the only answer.
Thank you, ma'am. She has another question. If a social worker is not skilled in a particular field concerning a case, but the client doesn't want to confide in any other counselor or social worker, what can be done in that situation from the social worker's end?
Again, a difficult situation, but in this case, what you can do for initial 2-3 counseling sessions, you can accompany the client. For example, the person to whom you have referred to this case is the person B. So you also accompany, you sit with person B, and while the client is there, so maybe a little bit of hand holding there. A couple of sessions here the person B takes, and then you can maybe terminate gradually. That is what can be done.
Okay, sure, ma'am. So moving on, there's a question from Joyita Bhattacharjee. Her question is how to understand where one can transcend the boundary of confidentiality. For example, a client, an adolescent, expresses in a session that he is facing suicidal tendencies. and doesn't want it to be disclosed to his significant adults. What can be done in such a situation?
Joyita, I'm really happy for all the questions that are posed that reflect that, yes, how sincerely you people practice social work. I also have shared in my session many of such dilemmas where partner notification wala case is there. So, for example, in this particular case and in partner notification wala, High Court of Delhi has given the guideline that you first try to convince the HIV positive client to notify the partner, and if he or she does not, then it is the right of the counselor to notify. So that is the legal maybe binding on the counselor himself or herself, that he she can. In this case of suicide, definitely if not these suicide ideations, 50% can be just to make you fearful so that you care more, and 50% can be genuine, so but you cannot take the risk. So in such situations, definitely you should not be allowing the client to go back all alone. You say ki any of your friends can be there, or maybe tell me if you do not want your parents to know, but then any of your friends, I cannot let you go like this. So the thing is that you need to bargain a little bit. If not family members, definitely we understand, because that is the breach of confidentiality. You yourself cannot say that, but you can convince him or her that whomsoever you trust, your friend, anybody, I would not let you go all alone. And then whenever you feel like, you can talk to me. So a little bit of extra caring is required in these suicide ideation cases, and certain tactics need to be employed when you can bargain. If not this, but yes, one person has to come here, you name, you tell, and let me talk to that person. So somewhere from your side, you try to make sure that this person is not left alone in the physical sense also, है ना? So that particular time period goes, then things might become better, and gradually you keep your counseling on, and so that whatever the unmet needs are unfulfilled na, so you start working on that, and somewhere if the client gains some confidence, some positivity, then the chances are high that she would not commit suicide.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. She has a second question. Could you please throw some light with an example on how to draw the boundary with respect to self-determination, such as for a child who is not old enough to make an informed choice or decision in any particular regard?
Jayata, and others, see, with regard to child, or maybe all the counselors, they are expected to breach confidentiality if they come across these two types of cases. So at that time, you are not supposed to maintain confidentiality. You need to maybe notify the competent authority about it. The first case is of national security. If some client comes to you and says that I plan to plant a bomb at such and such place, at that time you should not remain quiet. You need to inform to the police or maybe any other competent authority. The second is the case of child sexual abuse or pedophilia. So this is the second aspect or second domain where you should not keep quiet. You need to inform. So these are the two cases. Other than that, see again, these ethics, I cannot give any kind of answer that is perfectly right or perfectly wrong. There are many gray areas. With regard to children, I have personally experienced that they can be so mature that you would be astonished. Even many of the adults are not so mature. We held one this community radio program where children from the slum areas, they were called, and they said, and we were interviewing them. My students were interviewing, and it was on Children's Day, and definitely they were not prepared. So because the kind of answers that they gave, my students, they came jumping in my room, ma'am, we have never expected such a maturity from these children. So 9-year-old, 10-year-old, they shared that we keep on talking about child rights, but there should be a concept of child duties also. There are many children who their parents get their names written in the schools, and they run away from schools and they do not attend classes, and they are indulging in all kinds of antisocial behavior, which is equally wrong. As children, it is our duty to do this. So there maybe sensitivity that there is child rights and child duties go hand in hand. You know, that kind of maybe comprehension from their side, we were pleasantly surprised. But on the other side, we also have such children where they cannot make informed choices, and at that time, I also have shared, in some cases we just cannot do anything, but in other cases we should try to convince the maybe significant others, so that child's well-being can be ensured. So we have CWCs. We can convince the members of child welfare committees that this might be the right step or the right alternative for this child to ensure his or her well-being. So this is, but no right and wrong answer. Matlab, there are nothing that we can say ki, yes, this is the only answer for that.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Another question is from Saheli Sarkar. Her question is, could you please explain ethical standards in non-institutional social work with older people?
If I have understood correct, she asks me the ethical standards in non-institutional setting for older people.
For
है ना?
older, right.
See, there are not specifically such ethical standards for when we talk of ethical standards, we have talked about client self-determination, we have talked about integrity, competence, we have talked about dignity, social justice. So these also apply to elderly, like they apply to any other vulnerable group. Definitely, what would make us adhere to these ethical principles is that when you are asking these questions, we often face much of a challenge, in the sense that with regard to elderly people, there is some kind of maybe cultural ageism issues that we come across. We have seen in these COVID times that the family members, they are forcing the elderly to write will, to give the property in their names, because they are the elderly, they are vulnerable, they would die, and so that kind of elder abuse ke cases getting increased. So if we remain sensitive to these, if we remain sensitive to the needs of the elderly, they are more than enough. They themselves would become the guiding principles for us. There are no specific set of ethical guidelines to be followed for the elderly. We can derive, but these are from the main code of ethics that are given to us. Be culturally competent, or maybe culturally sensitive. So you shouldn't be talking about human rights to the elderly who have grown up for their entire life. They have talked about dharma or duty, and then all of a sudden you say, no, this is the human rights thing. So they would not. Give them time to adjust, and remaining ethically correct. It is irrespective of age and gender. So that is that would be my answer.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. We have another question from Riza Yasmin. She is asking how to maintain a professional relationship during and after the session ends with the client. How to deal a situation where the client is still contacting with the social worker to share personal issues without maintaining personal space.
I wish I would have resolved this for myself and given you the right answer for it. I do face problems in that, but definitely, dear, not picking up phone for some time and saying that right now I am engaged in this, can I talk to you tomorrow? So that people tend to know their boundaries. Outrightly refusing would not be the right thing, because as I said, counseling is not maybe indigenous to our culture. We have borrowed this thing, है ना? So we do not know. For social workers, we still learn through our training, but the clients, they do not know what counseling is all about, where these boundaries are. With doctors, they do not do this thing, है ना? Doctors, they know after taking medicine, they come home, and if they face any problem, they would go then only, because that cultural script is like that. But with regard to social workers, with regard to counselors, they do not have any such framework available. They think that you are friendly, and hota kya hai कि whosoever talks positively na, so we tend to feel happy, we tend to feel loved, appreciated, and we want to feel that again and again. And that is why this becomes vicious circle for the social worker, and it becomes very difficult. So very politely decline. Sometimes you say, right now I'm doing this, right now I'm doing that, can we talk tomorrow? Sometimes you pick up the phone, I just have 5 minutes, sorry dear. So be polite, but at the same time, wo boundary you only have to maintain and see how best you can. But yes, one thing is there, you yourself are very important. Don't neglect. Self-care is the divine responsibility. So we all need to adhere to that.
Thank you, ma'am. Due to time constraint, we'll just take one more question. This question is from Sujit Chaudhary. The question is, when in a case where there is one married couple having one child of 2 years of age, but after divorce, the custody of the child should be given to the mother or father as first priority. If the mother is housewife, because the child is just 2 years age, is there a question of competence and worth if the person, that is the father, or the custody should be given to the mother?
See, there are many complex things associated with it. The court takes the decision, and most often, see, I teach child development, and I have been a student of child development. For children, more than these basic needs, love and affection is equally a bigger need. So if a mother is able to provide that kind of love and affection, that is that sense of security. Sorry, time constraint here, but I would like to share one small experiment that was done by Bolbai. What he did, he took these little baby monkeys. So a very small baby monkey just born, and he placed this baby monkey in a cage, and this cage had two maybe structures of like a mother monkey. So one was made of wire meshy, wire, the hard one, and another one was very soft and cuddly and was soft toy, say the mother, where the child could feel cozy. So but the cozy wala jo mother thi would not be having the food ka option. So this wire meshy, the hard one, was having a bottle from where the child could take milk. So whenever the child was feeling hungry, at that time the child rushed to this particular wire meshy wala mother and would have food, and after that for the entire day would be in that cozy comfort lap of this mother monkey, wo jo effigy tha. So and the scientist, he made huge noises just to threaten the baby monkey, and with every such kind of threatening stimulus, the child would rush to that cozy wala monkey. So this shows how much love, affection, that tender care is important. So maybe because of these reasons, mothers are given custody, whereas fathers are asked to give child support allowance, and maybe rights to visit the child is definitely with the father. So again, but these are the things that a court decides on several other dimensions. So this is it, dear.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So just end the question session now. I would now request Panchali Devi Chaudhary, Assistant Professor, Department of Social Work, to offer the vote of thanks.
A very good afternoon to one and all present here. On this wonderful afternoon, it gives me immense pleasure to present vote of thanks for the event to all the dignitaries assembled here. I, Panchali Chaudhary, on the behalf of the Department of Social Work, NEF College, take this golden opportunity to thank our respected guest speaker and expert, Dr. Archana Kaushik, Associate Professor, Delhi University, for attending the webinar in her busy schedule and delivering her thoughts on ethical challenges of social workers. Thank you, ma'am. It was very informative, insightful, as well as very engaging. I extend my gratitude to the director of our institute, Dr. Zakir Hussain sir, for not only spending his time with us today, but also for his encouragement to achieve many endeavors. I'd also like to thank Assistant Director of our institute, Mrs. Farhana Ahmed ma'am, for her kind cooperation. It is my pleasure to thank Dr. Pankaj Chaudhary, Assistant Professor, NEF Law College, and Dr. Surinder Burma, Assistant Professor, Delhi University, for their kind cooperation and guidance to conduct the webinar session. I'm honored to take this opportunity to express my warm gratitude and heartfelt thanks to all the faculty members of Social Work Department, NEF College, for their hard work, commitment, and sincere effort to make the event a successful one. Last but not the least, I extend my heartfelt thanks to all the esteemed participants from all across the institutes and their overwhelming responses. Without your presence and participation, this event would not have been possible. We anticipate equal and more participation for tomorrow's session as well, like today. Once again,